This video shows how the Gambian government spends taxpayers' money for the first half of 2020. The pandemic struck the Gambia in mid-March and had a significant impact on government spending during the second quarter. So what is government expenditure? Expenditure refers to all the government's expenses for goods and services. Public expenditure comes in various forms, such as the construction of infrastructure, such as roads and bridges, government salary, subvention to public corporations such as Nyang and Gamtel, and much more. This year, the government released two reports detailing how expenditure has been spent during the first and second quarter of the year. Let's look at what the reports tell us about government expenditure this year. The Gambia government had planned to spend over $21 billion this 2020. According to the 2020 first quarter expenditure report from the Ministry of Finance, the government has spent over $4 billion in the first 3 months. This represents 13% of the total expenditure for the year. The latest update on the budget expenditure shows how the government spent funds from January to end of June 2020. It shows that government has spent $7.8 billion. This represents 37% of the total expenditure for the year, almost double the amount spent in the first quarter of the year. National Assembly member for Upper Salum, Honorable Alhagie Mbow, who sits on Parliament's Finance Accountability Committee, gives us an update on expenditure from January to August.
The government expenditure, if you look at it in totality, you're going to realize that the biggest chunk actually goes to personal emoluments, and which is the salaries that we pay to the government, to the civil servants. And then also the other one also is like debt service, which what we pay to the loans that we actually have taken for the past few years. So those two essentially actually will take probably almost more than 54 or 55% of really what our expenditure items are. And then the others go to subventions and the other recurrence, meaning things dealing with allowances that we actually pay to the other institutions. Now, I have not. What I've seen basically is about the expenditure of the government from January to August. So, which is really more than the second quarter, which is more than the first and 2 quarters, because of when you get a report showing your expenditure from January to August, really that's what I can talk about. You're going to see that 29% of the expenditure, which is the highest, it went to emolument, personal emoluments. And then 27% went to other current. When you look at it, also it's also part of what we pay to the civil service. So the two together, you're talking about almost 55% of the current expenditure. Then the other one goes to 24% goes to debt service, which means the loans that we have taken for the past few years. 24% of the current expenditure from January to August actually has gone to pay towards those loans that we have taken for the past few years. And then another 15% went to subvention to public institutions that we actually have. So you're going to see that if you really look at it in detail, you're going to realize that a big chunk actually has gone towards paying salaries, which is government workers, which is government civil service. And also another 4% only went to capital development. Now, capital development, essentially, you're talking about, development projects like in the water sector, in the road sector, etc., etc. So they only have almost like 4% of the total expenditure from January to August. That's exactly where it went.
We visited accountability watchdog advocate Marr Nyang to speak to him about government expenditure this year. The executive director of Gambia Participates, who recently published a report on coronavirus expenditure, gives us an insight on government expenditure during the first half of 2020.
So if you look at the way they've been spending our money, most of chunk of it has been going into recurrent expenditure, meaning the salaries, the administrative costs, whatever, per diem, and you name it. Then that of capital development, which has to do with the development of the country itself, road construction, improvement of our health facilities, healthcare, and education, and the likes. And then some of the social safety net that the people should be receiving, especially the most vulnerable and the poor families. I mean, things have not been going well in terms of the expenditure framework than it should be. So the taxpayers' monies have been collected. There's a lot of money that have been collected. There's an estimate of $11 billion on, if I'm giving you the right figure, that's supposed to be collected from tax.
Back in July 2020, the minister tabled the supplementary appropriation bill requesting for an addition of $3.3 billion. He told parliamentarians that the government's response to combat the coronavirus pandemic has dominated most of government expenditure this year. We speak to Luis Alsan, a recovered coronavirus patient, to get a better picture of the condition of treatment center she was living in, the quality of food, accountability and treatment received.
At some point, I felt they really needed to strategize. I don't know how much they were paying the hotels, especially for the food, but it doesn't worth it. Because I would say the food they were giving us, it wasn't balanced diet. And at some point, I said to myself, why will I blame the hotel? The ministry should have some of its health workers to monitor and supervise the kind of food that we were being given, because we needed a very good diet that will help us boost our system in order to fight the virus in our body. But that wasn't the case. It was very hard that some of us will have to order food outside or get some of our friends or family members to get us some good food that we need to eat. And I could give an example. That was this time they gave us an empty breads with egg, without mayonnaise or butter, and that was really hard to eat.
According to accountability watchdog Marr, corruption is still alive and kicking. An international ranking highlights a lack of budget transparency in the government.
So if you look at the ratings at the international standards, how Gambia is being rated in terms of budget transparency, we've scored 4 out of 100 with the Open Budget Survey 2019 that was published April 2020. If you look at the Corruption Perception Index as well, we are rated 96 out of 180 countries, if I'm right. But our position is at 96, least corrupt countries in the world. So that says how corruption is still thriving in this country. That also says how lack of transparency is killing our democratic institution, and how lack of transparency is also reducing the economy of this country. Because if there's not much transparency, good chunk of our money will be felt in the hands of our perpetrators, that is corrupt officials, and then you don't get to know who these corrupt officials are. We've been seeing gradually these corrupt officials are being identified, and it is through the hard work of organizations, civil society, and then journalists that have been identifying. But it's not government. I mean, government have not been doing anything, or if they've been doing something, they've not been doing much on sanctioning or giving, putting penalties on corrupt officials. All that they do is to put them on administrative leave or, eject them from the system. That's not accountability. Accountability is more than that. So, for me, rating the government's performance on accountability, I will just base it on the reports that are outside. And if you are to ask me in the line of 10, based on my own, opinion, without, this based on my own opinion, terms of lack of, I would just, leave it with the facts that are out there. That is the Corruption Perception Index, the Open Budget Survey, and the casting on Chaos report, which also shows the Gambia underreported $471 million compared to their partners, that is the Chinese and others that have been trading in this, extractive, in the timber industry. So I would just base it on the reports that are available for me being more accountable.
New opposition party leader Mr. Batchily of Gambia Action Party believes that the government has been abusing taxpayers' money.
The taxpayers' money, they have been abusing it. Look at last year before last, about 5 months, the way they travel within 5 months, the funds they use on per diem, on the flights and everything, is more than $10 million. What's come to us is $5 million. Jan has not ever been using that. So now for me, it's like Mumbai. It's like Mumbai Mate. So I'm really angry with the government. Barrow should change the gameplay. When I say he should change the gameplay, let Barrow call the best technocrats to help him how to manage our funds for the betterment of the country. As for now, they are abusing it.
It seems the accountability watchdog also agrees.
I have seen development in individuals in the government. I have not seen much development in the country.
After over half a century of independence and 3 different leaders, development still eludes Gambians. Binta Jallow for Eco TV.